witches, and welcome back to Writing on Jorvik. Today I wanted to talk about the Yule goats versus the possessed pumpkins. So I wanted to start this off because I see a lot of people kind of upset with how the Yule goats event is happening, and I really wanted to talk about it because I was super excited for the possessed pumpkins, and I am still generally excited about the Yule goats, but there's definitely some unhappiness with how this event released, and I want to try and get to the core of it, because I don't think while this system is entirely perfect, and it definitely could be better, I don't think it's entirely wrong, and I want to find what would have made it better for more folks. So let's dive into the core of that, because I really hope that this whole pile of event system doesn't get scrapped. So let's see what could have made it better. To start off, I really want to go over some of the quality of life stuff that the Star Stable team added to the Yule goats over the possessed pumpkins that I think make the events better. First of all, the hint system is amazing, particularly when we have more areas to explore, which is another benefit that I'll get to in a second. But the hint system is awesome, and I really love this because it can help navigate a really wide area, particularly when those hints are easy to see, and we'll get into some of the ones that aren't in a little bit. But I think this is a great addition. Further, I love that way more prizes were added. I think some of them might be a little bit wonky in scale of price, and some should be priced more than others, but I think that this is overall a really cool idea, and I love all these rewards to work towards. It gives the event a lot more life than just a couple things you can buy, although generally for me the horse XP is always going to continue to be a great reward, particularly when I had my Fonzie to train, and also a new Tinker next week, which I'm super excited to get. The other thing I loved is that there's way more currency you can get in a day if you have the time and are interested in grinding for it. Before, you could get like max maybe 20 or 30 possessed pumpkins a day if you stayed up for a full 24 hours and stayed on that timer perfectly, and now there's just a solid 40 of the goats that you can get every day, which I think is a great compromise because there's more you can get, and that makes things a lot easier to get, particularly some of those more expensive prizes. I also like that there aren't any weird time limits like there were. As much as it was nice to kind of like have a timer on the background and then go check for possessed pumpkins, being able to sit down and just do Yule goats is a lot more fun for me, and particularly I think it makes it more accessible because it means that no one has to memorize like having a timer up or constantly checking back if they don't know the timer, or logging in and logging out and accidentally resetting their timers. I think the system is a lot better overall just because timers are internal on Star Stable and it's not something that we have to manage as the player. I also really like that the tutorial for this version of the event was loads better than the possessed pumpkins were. While the possessed pumpkins did have a consistent tutorial in game, there was nothing actually showing you how to do it other than some instructions, and so if the written instructions made no sense, well, good luck at figuring it out. Fortunately, the community got on that in either case in helping people figure out how to run the event, but I definitely like how the Alex little storyline with the Cloud Mills helped you actually figure out how the event works, and I think that's way more helpful since these mechanics are still relatively new to Star Stable. I also really liked, and this is important as part of considering that this is still testing a system, is that this was available to everyone. The possessed pumpkins were great, but they were only available to high-level players who had access to golden. And so having more areas to interact, if, say, you're not interested in doing the Silverglade one, there are 4 other regions that you can hunt goats in, and also 2 of those are available to free players, which means everyone can interact with this, which means this is going to be a great sample size of what the whole Star Stable community think of these mechanics. And beyond just the actual parts of it, the meta mechanics that we don't see going on have me super excited on account of the fact that, like, this is basically what I talked about in my Possessed Pumpkins video about having whole meta events happening, like the Furgrove one. This is basically a single player meta event where you have a number of areas where you can do events, and then those events add to progress on lanes, like hunting for goats in different regions, and then all of those lanes add to an overall score for the portal point reward system, which is basically scaling to a meta event. So this is one gigantic Star Stable meta event that is currently single player, but I'm really excited to see how these mechanics work. And I realized I've spent about 5 minutes gushing just about how this thing works, but I'm really excited about a lot of the things in here, and which is one of the reasons why I want to get to why people didn't like it and what could have been better. So what were some of the reasons that people didn't like it? And before we get too far into this, I want to mention something that did technically happen during the Halloween event, but it definitely happened during the Christmas event, and I think it's a lot more frustrating, particularly considering that this currency is harder to get. And that is that the Christmas wishes were reset and you had to get brand new this year Christmas wishes. This is really important because Christmas wishes are already super difficult to get. You can only get about 6 in a day, particularly with the current setup. That might change if the other Winter Village race comes back, but currently you can only get 6 of those wishes in a day, which makes it a really slow grind to get all of those rewards. And then you add on top of that all of the goats, which can add up if you do all 5 of the portals every single day, adds up to about 2 hours every day in investment. And so the collective of that is that getting all of the Christmas wishes and getting all of your portal points in a day invests a lot of time, and I think a lot of people are kind of passively resentful about Star Stable resetting something that already they made a lot of progress on. For instance, with the Christmas wishes, I know a lot of people who saved up Christmas wishes for this year's, and then to have it reset was really frustrating because a lot of people are busy during the holidays. And I think that's a point we're going to come back to a lot, is that a Christmas or a winter holiday event needs to be balanced with the idea that everyone is going to be busy. I understand that Star Stable's core player base is going to be off from school, which means they're probably going to have more free time, and that's probably more in line with their thinking on this kind of balance. But I do think that there also needs to be some consideration that everyone is going to have less time because they're visiting with family, and resetting any kind of progress. People who decided to play last year on events that they thought were interesting are going to be genuinely frustrated, and I think that definitely adds on to the frustration that we have once we get into the Yule Goats. The second thing is that the prices are a little bit odd, particularly in their price bloat. Going from the prices for the pumpkins, most of the prices were about 2 to 3 times more than their relative tier when we talked about the Possessed Pumpkins events. Like, while I understand that those brown sweaters are references to traditional Nordic sweaters, I don't understand why they're more expensive than the sweaters that reference the actual game that most of the community is going to get. Finally, the tier 2 of the Possessed Pumpkins, which was things like food and shillings and soul shards, that kind of equivalent reward system has been completely removed from this, and I think it would be really beneficial to see that added back in, particularly considering that the Christmas wishes are one of the harder event currencies to collect. It'd be really nice to see that return, and I think there's some frustration that didn't. And that makes not only doing goats frustrating, but it also means that you have to grind both without rewarding equivalently one to the other. Higher Silverglade region is way too big for the hint system to work efficiently, particularly if you ever get a goat over in Nilmers. It's not really very easy to get back around the castle in time to see any of the hints that go off to the goat locations over by Silverglade River, so unless it's heading towards Silverglade itself or over to the winery, it's really hard to find those points, which is one of the reasons why it's frustrating that you can't re-ping the hint system. That's one of the things that really should have been added, particularly because if you are loading into an area, or if you just don't know where the boundaries that hints are going to start launching off at, then it can be pretty frustrating to make sure that you are going in the right direction, and considering how big the Silverglade area is for searching, that's kind of a big downside, and I really hope this is something that's added to a patch. But I think the biggest issue is something that we've kept touching on over all of these, and that is the amount of time investment that doing Yule Goats is asking people to invest. So what does that mean? Because it's a really hard comparison to say that Star Stable is asking you to commit way more time to the Yule Goats, because if we look at things from the view of the Possessed Pumpkins to the Yule Goats, it technically takes about the same amount of time to get the top tier rewards. It takes 30 minutes over 4 to 5 days collecting the easy 5 pumpkins to get the pumpkin pet that was at the top tier of that system, and it takes relatively the same amount of day to get the doggo pet. It's just that the 2 hours is over 1 day of collecting all 40 of the possible goats in a day, and then a couple into the second day, which isn't too hard. But I don't think it's just that it takes more time, it's that the ratio of things to do in that time has significantly increased for the Yule Goats. For instance, just as a quick reminder, the pumpkin pet for Halloween was only 20 of the Possessed Pumpkin tokens, meanwhile the doggo is 50. And while there are access to way more points to collect, it's a lot more to ask people to collect that many in order to reach that same amount. Just as a point of comparison, I did 2 portals in my recording of the footage that's going on in the background, and it took me 30 minutes to do both of those. That's roughly the same amount of time it took to do the 5 easy pumpkin for the Possessed Pumpkin event for Halloween. Now, the big difference is that for the Possessed Pumpkin event, you are only doing 5 pumpkins for the entirety of that 30 minutes. Meanwhile, for the Yule Goats, it's 16 in the same amount of time. Now, while I personally like doing more in that amount of time and less waiting for things to do, I think that the ratio of time to amount of interactables went up at too far an incline for the majority of the community. it's definitely understandable that people felt like this was more grindy because there literally are more things you have to collect and do during that period of time to achieve the same amount of result. And when things can be buggy, like being able to click on Yule goats easily, or the hints on relatively large areas like Silverglade, it can get understandable why people will be frustrated with the scope and scale of how much they have to do in the same amount of time, and why that feels a little more grindy. I definitely think there should have been an increase compared to what happened for the Possessed Pumpkins, but I think that Star Stable may have gone a little overboard when talking about the ratio of what that should have been. Now, before I suggest what I think would help make the event better and work a lot smoother for folks, I want to talk about some counterpoints because I do genuinely really like this system, and I think overall this is a good direction, particularly if this style of event was transplanted from holiday events into just general events around the map. I think 2 hours is a good amount of time for running a meta event, particularly with everyone interacting, but I think having that player interaction makes it feel like you're investing less time because you're interacting with other people, and that's the benefit of MMO. But I do think that how Star Stable has done it makes the holiday event more like other MMOs. And while there definitely needs to be a better reward to time investment ratio, most MMOs will ask that you spend about 75% of your time investing 30 to an hour minutes a day in order to get all of their holiday rewards. But that follows up into the second point, is that most MMOs don't expect you to finish all of those holiday rewards during the event. And that shouldn't be an expectation in Star Stable. And I think this becomes an issue of Star Stable's in-game, considering that they haven't really balanced out collectathon kind of players and making an in-game that isn't that. And so a lot of people feel like they have to spend their time during an event collecting everything, when that's not a healthy way to play MMOs. And I'm going to repeat that point a couple times, that you shouldn't be trying to 100% events. That's not how MMOs work, and if you're looking at an MMO as a collectathon, you really should assess how you're interacting with MMOs, because that's dangerous and that puts you prone risk to binge spending on games to be able to get all rewards. So long as all of the rewards this year return next year, I really don't think this system is bad, and that's, again, how most MMOs run their system. And again, you only need to do 2 portals a day in order to receive all of the rewards. As long as you do 2 portals a day for the whole event, you would definitely make all of the rewards. I'm almost a week into doing the full amount every day, and I'm the better part into all of the rewards. So it's not a huge amount of investment over numbers of days. It only takes completing 2 portals a day in order to get all of the rewards by the end of the event, and even then you'd be done early if you did 2 portals a day from the very start of the event, which is, again, about 30 minutes of time investment, which is roughly equivalent to the pumpkin. So I definitely think that people need to slow down, be more willing to wait on getting rewards, because as long as you just take some time and are okay with getting it not around Christmas, then you can achieve all the rewards within the parameters of the event length. And I also want to point out that this is only the second time Star Stable has run this event. I've seen some people who are frustrated that the Yule Goats runs almost identical to how the Possessed Pumpkin works, but this is a brand new mechanic, and they're likely testing out a lot more background mechanics than what we're seeing. For instance, I mentioned that this is basically a single-player meta, and all of that needs to be tested in single-player before it can be tested in multiplayer, and then can be released in events that happen all throughout the year and just randomly pop up, like events in Guild Wars 2 or the Fate system in Final Fantasy. The Possessed Pumpkins was really the first test of this, and it had a small sample size of its long-term players, but now Yule Goats are testing everyone, and that's a huge change in your study of how many people you're interacting with, and it's really important that Star Stable is spending this time collecting data so they can accurately make this content more engaging. And so I really hope that people don't look at this and think that it's perfect, and I genuinely don't believe that Star Stable thinks the system is perfect. I think overall the Possessed Pumpkins and the Yule Goats, how they are, the Possessed Pumpkins being a really low prize reward, was an initial test to see if people even liked the mechanics, and then this one is a test of the mechanics to see how far people are willing to grind for content without overwhelming them. And that's important testing, and I understand people are really frustrated that this is the time that they're doing it, because the holidays are pretty busy for most folks, but I don't think that should rule out these mechanics, because it is just a test, and I think it's important to remind yourself of that, and that the fact that Star Stable is still collecting data on how people are responding to this means that you should constructively find the reason you don't like about this content and respond to that so that the event can get better. Because I don't think the response should be that this content should be removed. I think this is overall like a really good system, and I'm excited to see where it goes. With that said, what would actually be my suggestions to make this content better? First of all, hints should be repingable. If you go up to the portal, you should be able to reping the hint, because there are too many situations where you'll just miss the hint. Say if you are running a race and drop into a zone, if you are just loading in to an area by taking a trailer, if you're logging back on, you will miss the hint because it will trigger before the map loads for you. If you just forget which direction you're supposed to be going in, I think the hints should be repingable by heading back to the portal. That's pretty easy and just should be a click and then go. The second thing is that there should be an in-game tutorial again, like there was for the Possessed Pumpkins. As nice as the one with Alex was, there should be a place in-game to reread the instructions in case you forget. That's just, tutorials should be accessible regardless of if there was an in-game one or not. Tutorials should always be re-accessible. And the final suggestion should be that portals should give 2 points. I know I said that I personally like the scale, and I like that over the course of the whole event there's more to work towards, but I do definitely understand the idea that there's a lot of more casual play in Star Stable, and then asking people to grind can be frustrating. And so I think if we brought it down to just getting 1 portal done total got you 2 portal points, a lot of people would feel a lot better about it, because you can just do 1 portal a day completely. So find 8 goats in a day, get 1 point at collecting 4 goats, and then 1 at collecting 8 goats. That's still a scale up from asking people to do 5 pumpkins in a day, and it rewards you more accurately to time investment, and then you can do 2 and get 4 points in a day, and so you still spend your 30 minutes and you feel like you get more rewarded for that system. I wouldn't actually scale down any of the prizes. I think the amount of points and spirits you can get within a day is reasonable. I think the only thing that should be scaled is that 2 points per region for the portal points, because I think it makes it more accessible for people who are just like, I can only do 1 portal a day. It takes me 30 minutes on a laggier computer to get that done. And I think that's pretty reasonable, particularly for free players who only have 2 portals to play with. That makes it a lot less grindy, because for those free players, you have to do basically every portal every single day, and you only got 2, and you really can't miss more than like 4 days at this point. I don't think you can miss any days at this point if you are a free player to be able to get all the rewards. So it just makes it more accessible. It makes the content, I think, would feel a lot less grindy. But I think everything else is relatively fine. But this is also a test. I don't know. And so what do you guys think? That's the whole point of these videos, is to ask you guys your opinions. So what do you guys think? What would make this better for you with the changes I made to make things better for you? What would your suggestions? Let me know in the comments down below, or hop into the Discord linked in the description as well for all of it. I am excited to hear what you guys think, because I'm just one person and I genuinely want to know, like, why did some of y'all like this and why didn't you? So with that said, that's all I got for y'all today. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will talk to you all later. Bye! Hey all, thank you all so much for watching. I really appreciate it. I can't thank you guys enough for continuing to support writing on Jorvik. This will be continuing over the holidays. I probably will be doing a little bit smaller episodes, but we'll see. If you ever want to get in touch, check out all my social medias linked down below. Check out the Patreon if you want to go above and beyond for supporting me and all my podcast folks. And I'll talk to you guys later. Bye!